Lights Out, Chapter 32, Part 2. It's a long chapter. Probably going to do it in 2 more sections, but we'll see. Might be 3. Okay, how so? I was wondering what was happening at the shelters, Mark observed. I expect if they don't let people leave pretty soon, it's going to get violent, Stephen projected. Mr. and Mrs. Hawkins, do you have any other skills that might be helpful to us? Mary Patterson asked in a voice Mark was sure prospective employees of her company had heard many times. The only thing I can think of is that I'm certified to teach math as well as music. I haven't taught it in many years, but I did when I first got out of college until I got a full-time music position. Lisa told me you're all starting a school and might need a math teacher and a kindergarten teacher. Mark looked at Lisa. He'd have to talk to her about saying too much to strangers. Anything else? Mary inquired. Both of them shook their heads. Then would you excuse us for a moment? Sure, the man answered. Let me just say, if you all let us stay here, we will do our fair share. We don't have anywhere else to go, so we can't afford to disappoint you. The talent scouts all nodded their heads as they moved back out of earshot from the couple. What do y'all think? Manny asked. I say we give them some food and send them on their way, Mark answered first. That's pretty cold. They don't have anywhere to go. They're obviously nice people, and they could really help us teach the kids, Lisa snapped at Mark. Are we going to take them in because they're nice and don't have anywhere else to go? We might as well let everybody who walks by move in, Mark shot back. I agree with Mark, Mary said. We don't need a music teacher, and anyone can teach kindergarten. It might be nice to have a math teacher, but he hasn't done that for a long time. The benefits just don't justify taking in 2 more mouths to feed. Mary, I expected the men to be short-sighted, but not you. We can use a music teacher, and teaching young children is a lot more complicated than 1, 2, 3s and ABCs, Lisa said. I think Lisa's right. Music is important. I think this is a good opportunity to improve our teaching staff. Remember, we have 120 kids to educate, Dr. Vasquez added. Everyone looked at Manny. His would be the deciding vote. I'm not sure which way to vote. I don't know that much about education, but if Lisa and the doc think these people could help us, then I'm going to vote to present the Hawkins to the group. Who are they going to live with? We have to find someone who will take them in before we can take them before the whole group, Mary cautioned. They can move in with us, Doc Vasquez volunteered. I guess that settles it, Mark said. Doc, do you want to take them to your house until tonight? The doc nodded. I think you need to talk to them about how this is going to work, that if the group doesn't accept them, they'll have to leave by tomorrow morning at the latest. Okay, Mark. The doctor went and got the Hawkins. Everyone else headed back up to their houses. Mark and Lisa walked up the hill, and Mark mentioned to her that she should be careful about how much information she gives out to strangers. At first, she bristled at Mark's suggestion, but before they got back to the house, she understood. Jess was in the kitchen when they walked in, and Lisa filled her in on the couple who they would vote on that night. Jess was very excited about both of the escapees. Mark asked her why. Because children need to be exposed to more than just the 3 R's. Art is important, and music is an important art. Music students always do better in their other subjects. There have been a lot of studies that prove that. Why so giddy over a kindergarten teacher, though? Let me ask you a question. When you get brand new white belt students in your karate class, who teaches them? I do. Why? Aren't they learning the most basic things? Couldn't anyone in your class teach them? Yes, but I like to do it because what they learned at first is what all of their karate is going to be built on. If they don't understand what they're doing and why in the beginning, Mark paused, realizing what she was doing. I hate it when you do that, he said with a smile. Do what? Jess smiled back. You know what. Making me answer my own question. But now I see why you're excited about Mrs. Hawkins. By meeting time, almost everyone knew about the Hawkins. Most had made up their minds, and a few impromptu polls showed that, while it was close, the couple did not have the votes they needed to be granted admittance to Silver Hills. Once all of the other business had been completed, everyone was acquainted with the prospective residents. Lisa brought them up and introduced them to the group and explained why the committee had voted to bring them before the group for a vote. Mark thought she did a good job of explaining the benefits of having them here. Obviously, everyone could see the downside to having more mouths to feed. Both of the candidates said a few words to the crowd about what they could offer and how much they'd appreciate an opportunity to help out with the education of the children. Mark felt that Lisa might have swayed enough people to her side. He asked if anyone else would like to say something before they took the vote. John raised his hand. I was afraid this would happen if we formed this committee. We said we were looking for a doctor, and you bring us a drum major and a glorified babysitter. What's on the agenda for next week? A clown because he makes everyone laugh? Let's get real, people. We can't afford to let everyone in here just because they might be able to help out a little. I say we can't afford to take them in. John had probably swayed some votes back to the no side, Mark thought. He asked if anyone else wanted to say something. Jess stood up and addressed the crowd. I want to say that I think we need these teachers. Mr. Hawkins is not only a music teacher, he's also a certified math teacher. We can stand here and debate the merits of having some music instruction incorporated into our education program. I think music is extremely important, but not everyone agrees. However, I think everyone would agree that mathematics is very important. If the music is nothing but a fringe benefit of having him here, then he can earn his keep teaching math. Mrs. Hawkins is an experienced primary educator. The first 3 years of schooling are the most important in a child's education because that's what the foundation of their knowledge is based upon. They are not just learning their alphabet and numbers, they are learning how to learn. If we can't... John rudely interrupted Jess. You just want them here to make your job easier. You won't admit that we don't need them because you're a teacher just like them who gets paid mostly just to babysit. Mark saw the look on Jess's face. He'd seen it a few times in the 19 years they've been married, and it was never good for whomever made her look that way. He knew what was coming. Mark almost felt sorry for John. John Olson, she started, with her voice barely above a whisper and speaking very slowly, and emphatically, even though her face was as red as a fire engine. Each word was spoken slightly louder and more quickly than the one before. I have listened to you spew your hateful crap for long enough. You don't know what you're talking about. I have been a professional educator for over 20 years. Do you have any experience educating children? John just shook his head, having the gall to look shocked at the reaction he was getting. Mark wondered what he'd expected Jess to do. If he thought he could intimidate her into just stopping, he obviously didn't know who he was dealing with. Do you even have any experience raising children? She demanded. No, but then why don't you just shut the fuck up and let me finish? A roar erupted from the crowd. Some were cheering, others were laughing, and most were doing some form of both. It took more than a minute for the crowd to quiet down enough for Jess to finish. Mark looked, and John seemed to have melted to about half of his former size. The guy just didn't get it. Mark wondered if he ever would. When Mark called for the vote, the Hawkins were voted into the community by a landslide. Mark wasn't sure if it was because Jess had convinced everyone they were needed, or if it was because she had said to John what most of them wanted to say. He suspected the latter. Ted asked if the education committee could meet with the Hawkins, and the meeting broke up. Okay, I don't know. I'll keep going. All right. Mark's alarm went off at 1:30. Oh, speaking of that. Look at the time there. I didn't move it. I mean, I can reach over and grab this one. They're both still running. I didn't touch either one of them. Mark's alarm went off at 1:30. That's pretty funny. Just pure coincidence. Nothing to see here. Move along. Okay. That was pretty funny. All righty, moving right along here. He got up and got ready to pull his shift. It was hard to get up in the middle of the night, but today was like a Friday to him, even if it was Thursday. He had to pull the shift and teach his 2 classes today, but then Gunny didn't have him scheduled again until Monday morning. He, David, and a couple of the other men were going down to his deer lease early tomorrow to see if they could get some meat. He was looking forward to spending some time with his son, even if Jess wasn't crazy about them going. The sky was clear, and it was almost too cool. There must have been a billion stars in the sky. Mark and his men made their rounds without incident until almost dawn. Mark's radio crackled, and then a voice came over it. CP to Rover 1 and Rover 2, both Mark and the other team leader responded. OP reports a large group heading for the gate from the west on foot, ETA 6 to 8 minutes. Mark and his crew started heading to the front. CP, this is Rover 1. Can OP estimate number of travelers? Stand by, Rover 1. There was a pause for the CP to relay the question to the OP and get his answer over the CBs. Mark wished they were all on the same frequency. It would make things easier. Rover 1. OP reports best estimate at 25 to 30. He says they're not using any light or sound discipline. He also reports he can see a few weapons. He cannot confirm how many. Roger that, CP. Rover 2, this is Rover 1. Go ahead, Rover 1. Rover 2, proceed directly to Foxhole 2. I'm sending Ted and Joe to join you. I'm going straight to the gate, Foxhole. Roger, Rover 1. Rover 2 is headed to Foxhole 2. CP, do you read? Go ahead, Rover 1. Paul, wake Scott up and have him get some of his crew into Foxhole 3 as quickly as he can. Give him the spare walkie-talkie and have him give me a call when he's in position. Have him send someone to get Gunny. Roger, Rover 1. CP is waking Charlie's shift. Mark was trotting as he spoke into the radio. Now that he didn't need to talk, he broke into a full run. It took less than 4 minutes from the time Paul had called him from the CP to the time he was in the foxhole with the gate guards. He could see flashlight beams from where the visitors were coming from. He hoped they would pass the subdivision by. A few minutes later, he heard Scott on the radio. Delta shift, this is Charlie shift. I am in Foxhole 3 with 2 of my crew. Don went to wake the old man. Roger that, Scott. Okay, guys, this is what we've been training for. Everybody just sit tight, and hopefully they'll just waltz right by. Mark could hear the people coming now, as well as see their lights. It was a good sign, he thought, that they didn't know what they were doing. Good for him, anyway. The group got closer and closer to the gate. Mark could see that most of the grown-ups were carrying bottles. He couldn't tell for sure what was in them, but from the slurred speech, he was betting it wasn't Kool-Aid. There were about 20 adults and around 10 kids. When they got to the entrance of the subdivision, the leader of the pack noticed the heavy gate. Whoa! Look at that gate! That'll keep the riffraff out, I bet. The man was almost hollering. Anybody there? Mark and the others kept their heads down and hoped the drunks would go away. The loudmouth would put one foot on the gate and started to climb. Hold it right there, Mark barked authoritatively. The drunken man jumped back off of the gate and looked around, trying to figure out where the voice had come from. Who said that? Where are you? I'm on the other side of the gate. You are not welcome here. Please move on down the road. We want to take a little rest. You let us in, the drunk man demanded. I'm sorry, we don't have a place for you to rest. Please just move along and no one will get hurt. You can't threaten us. We have guns. I see that. We have more guns. And they're all aimed at you right now. The drunken man must have not been too drunk. He changed his tact. We don't want to hurt nobody. We escaped from that damn shelter and we just want to rest up a little. Couldn't you let us in to take a little nap? I'm sorry, but that is not possible. If you move on down the road a couple of miles, I'm sure you can find a place. Good luck. One of the women came up and grabbed the loudmouth. Come on, Kyle, let's go. Okay, but these people are damned inconsiderate, he yelled. You hear me? You're a lousy host. The group started moving down the road, still making all kinds of racket and shining their light all over the place. Mark breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't want to get into a fight with a bunch of drunks. When the pack had ambled out of sight of the OP, Mark gave the all-clear sign. He went back to the command post and found Gunny there. It was daylight enough to see now. Gunny told everyone to report to his house for debriefing as soon as Delta's shift was over. By 8:05, all of Delta's shift and part of Charlie's shift was at Gunny and Abby's house. Abby had a huge dining room table, and she served the men breakfast as Gunny spoke to them. He asked them what had happened, step by step. Everyone felt the encounter had gone fairly well, but there was something that bothered Mark. We only had 8 minutes' notice with a loud, easy-to-spot group of people walking up the road. What if they'd been quiet and hard to spot? Or if they were coming in vehicles? We may have had a minute or less. We need more time than that. We also need a way to get a backup crew of more than 3 men in a short time. Anything else, Gunny asked. Yeah, Paul Jensen said, we could use a way to have everyone on the same radio frequency. Having to relay a message back and forth slows us down. Plus, when I went to get Scott, there was no way for the Rovers to communicate with anyone. Paul was glad Mark had mentioned that. Mark was glad Paul had mentioned that. Gunny told the men the security committee would discuss all of their concerns at their next meeting. He encouraged the men to enjoy their breakfast and told them that they'd done a good job. The teams finished eating and thanked Abby for the delicious meal. On their way out, Gunny had a request. Karate Man, would you stay for a minute or two? Sure, Gunny, what's up? All right.